What's the difference between Chacham and Pikeach, a wise man and shrewd individual? What's the difference between shrewd and smart? The simple answer is, right, as a smart person do not enter the domain that the shrewd know how to get out. Verstehst? Joe, you agree with that?
No, I don't understand yet.
Okay, so let me explain it. You have a smart person,
right,
and you have a shrewd individual. Smart person do not even enter to a place that the shrewd person know how to get out.
Right. Yes, right. Yes. Yeah, I consider.
So
that.
Smart person in that sense is better than a shrewd.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. Why are we saying that? Because tonight is a special yahrzeit. It was a great Hasidic Rebbe, was named Reb Shlomo from Zvil. It was a great shtetl named Zvil. He came to Israel and he lived there, and everybody used to, he has an open door policy. So one time it was Yeshiva Bocher, a student of Yeshiva, that stayed over by him. And he said to him, do you mind to wake me up early in the morning, 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning? The Rebbe said to him, I can do everything for you, but I cannot wake you up. The boy wake up 5:30, and he noticed the Rebbe sitting there and study. Next day he asked him the same story. So he said to him, I don't understand, Rebbe. You sitting and study for a couple of hours, what's the big deal for you to wake me up? So you know what the Rebbe said? Do you know what happens psychologically when a person wake up? You tell me. You know what happened? First few seconds, he's mad. Right?
Right, angry, yeah.
Right? And then after that, he comes down. So the tzaddik, the great Rebbe, said, I do not want to cause you sorrow, even for a moment. You're a young man, you need to sleep, I don't want to do that. I can open my home for you, but I don't want to wake you up. It's a story about a great man, whose name is Rabbi Itzale Blazer, who was a very well-known Torah scholar in Israel. He married to a woman, if I'm not mistaken, about 15 years. They have no children. As a young man, try, nothing happened. He reaches 50. And he said, I don't want to cause her sorrow. Eventually, when he reached 50, she initiated divorce. So he married another woman, and he had a tremendous respect for the first wife. It was just the whole issue of having children. The second one came with her own children from a previous marriage. And he was extremely strict and respectful. Even he has his own children from the second wife. So the children of the first wife, he treated the children of the first wife very differently than his own children. Why? Because he said, when you committed yourself in the Ketubah, in the marriage contract, so what happened in that commitment? Yes, it is, what is written in the commitment is basically the sustenance, the shelter.
Sure.
But what the Torah meant by that is, first and foremost, to be very hypersensitive to her feelings. And since she went through a traumatic event with the first husband and the children and everything, and those children have a stepfather and all the interdynamics in a family, a person, and it's an important message, a person should be very careful with that because it's a sensitive source. So the point is, it's not just what it's written in the Ketubah, it's not just what the contract spell out, it's much deeper than what the contract spell out. So here we are, beginning of chapter 12. Today we're going to deal with a lot of very important foundations in many halachot, many essential viewpoints. First and foremost, in the business world. Business people, listen, it's a lot to learn today. Not only that, we're going to learn halachot in regards to matanot and kinyanim, gifts and transactions between parties, how and when and where those transactions taking place. There was a great rabbi by the name of Rabbeinu Asher, in abbreviation it's called Rosh. He asked, for example, a question. When you have a young bride and young groom, and the father of the bride and the father of the groom committed themselves to each other to certain things, such as wedding expense. I have the privilege to do it 3 times already, Baruch Hashem, right? He made a very clear distinction between commitment, regardless if it's a written or verbal or shaking hands, if it's a father of the bride and the groom, or if it's a brother or mother. Why? We're going to discuss it. The key point is, it's called kinyanim. The matter of the simcha, the matter of the celebration of seeing their children getting married, that itself is a matter of transactions between parties. That's the matter which we call kinyan, ma'aseh kinyan, transaction between parties. So our first point in the Mishnah, it's a painful situation. Woman married to a man, have a daughter, and got divorced. You look at the divorce rate in the Jewish world, in the United States, it's very painful. You guys tell me, what's the percentage so far in 2015?
It's going up.
About what?
I don't know.
They say 76%, what did they say? It's a high percentage, whatever it is.
Divorce?
Yes, level of divorce.
Oh, that was 50, at least 50.
Anyway, there's all kind of void. Let's say even at least, as Joe said, at least 50, okay? So we are not in the ancient Talmud of the, the 3rd and the 4th century. We are 2015. And here she went through a traumatic event. She brought a daughter and she met this wonderful man. She wanted to open a new chapter in her life. So he committed himself in a Ketubah, not only in a regular matter of Ketubah, which is what? Sheltering her, the sustenance, the relations,
redeeming from captivity,
the redeeming from captivity, taking care of her burial expenses, right?
Sure. Medical
expense. He also committed himself for 5 years to support his stepdaughter, the daughter she had from previous marriage. But here is several problems. What happened if they divorced during those 5 years? What happened if that daughter got married? So here we are. Today we're going to study page 102, but we start on page 101b at the Mishnah. הנושא את האישה, one who marries a woman, ופסקה עמו, and she stipulated, look, she's broken-hearted. She, for example, there is an organization in America for religious women. It's called Sister for Sister, I think. That's the name in New York City, someone told me. Hundreds and hundreds of women that feel that they didn't get what they're expecting or for all kind of reasons and they are total broke. So she in love with this man, but she make a stipulation. She said, כדי שיזון את ביתה, that she asked him to make sure she have a young daughter, let's say this daughter is 13 years old, okay, and she wanted him to support her daughter, which is his stepdaughter, 5 shanim, 5 years. חייב לזונה 5 shanim. This man is obligated to support her, his stepdaughter, for 5 years. Now just remember, the Rashba tells us, as the Ran brought, we don't know when exactly the beginning of that commitment started, which is crucial. Why? We only have assumption that he meant to say from where? From the moment they got married. We don't know yet. Okay? Since this is something that he committed himself, it is not part of the Ketubah. Remember, the formulation of Ketubah, it's called in our language Tnai Bet Din, which means the rabbi, the religious rabbinic court, formulated a contract. This is outside of the contract. So that's not including the regular, let's say, food, sustenance, clothing. So the two Rebbe Ezer in Kuf Yud Dalet 114 said the formulation of that is almost like a separate amendment or separate contract out of the regular marriage contract. Why 5 years? It's also explanations, not yet. Here are the problems. As you all know, when people get married, sometimes they're very high, sometimes people commit themselves to all kind of things. God bless my dad, he used to be very active rabbi for more than 50 years of his life. He built a beautiful, beautiful Orthodox community in Neve Sha'anan in Haifa. So I remember as a child, we used to go to sometimes even 2 weddings a night. And you're sitting, and the groom is so high. Oh, Rabbi, write 1,000,000 shekel in a Ketubah. And Dad used to say, be serious. Yeah! Especially those guys from Georgia, right? No offense. And then...
We're not talking about Atlanta.
No. Russia.
No.
Right? Gruzini. Anyway. So...
Tbilisi.
Now the problem is, guess what? Unfortunately, they get divorced. And they get divorced during those 5 years. But here already, this man committed himself. Niset le'acher. So guess what happened to her? She walked out of that marriage. He still commit himself to support her daughter. She got divorced from this one, from the second husband, and she's going now to a third husband. And guess what happened now? She make a deal with the third husband, the same as the second one. You got to support my daughter for 5 years. Upaska imo שיזון את ביתה 5 שנים. That he should support her daughter, which again is a stepdaughter of the third husband, חייב לזונה 5 שנים. You cannot say that since the second husband already committed himself to support her daughter for 5 years. It's 2 different cases. You see business? It's 2 different story. She's smart. So now she have a double from the second and from the third. לא יאמר הראשון, so the first one who married her cannot say לכשתבוא אצלי azuna. So I explain in my book on Rashi I have one of the longest explanations of this Rashi. Rashi said, כלומר, אם הייתי מקיימת עמה הייתי זנה. Meaning, if I stay in a formulation of marriage, it's a different story. My commitment of 5 years was only if we stay in marriage. I did not plan when I commit myself to support her daughter regardless. So again, if you want and if you wish, I wrote here from Maharit Tzahalon, it's one of the rabbis, explanation of this Rashi and Klomar at very length, and it's way above the scope in this short Daf Yomi. You're welcome, those who read Hebrew, to read my writing on this Rashi, but in very, very short.
Is Rashi implying then that he's not responsible for that if he after the
excellent
because he had that in mind? I mean, I understand that's what the intent was, but if
the
you don't,
idea is here you have the rabbis that struggle, the Rashash, the Shita Mekubetzet, many rabbis try to struggle if there's any room. The husband, I mean, for her is the second, but the first husband for our discussion, okay, which is her second husband, he felt in some way cheated. Because he said, all right, I commit myself, but wait a second, I commit myself only if I married you.
but doesn't he?
But even I commit myself, and even we got divorced, but you're going to tell me that this other guy is paying her, and I need to keep up money even I don't have, just because I commit myself, especially since she gets support from the other one? Remember, this is not a federal
Well, I understand,
court.
but it would seem, I know we're going to get to it, but the end of the Mishnah already seems to address that.
We're not yet.
I understand.
Good. But you see the struggle here,
Right.
okay?
Absolutely.
Next step, אלא מוליך לה מזונותיה למקום שעימה. Meaning, if the daughter living with the mother, his stepdaughter, he need to send the sustenance to the place she is. Because usually, the Rabbi Yonah said that the students said that that's the place usually the daughters stay there, but it's not necessarily. It's just a manner of common behavior that the daughter is staying with her mother. וכן לא יאמרו שניהם, the two husbands cannot say, הרי אנו זנין אותה כאחד. Guess what? These two guys get together in Starbucks and said, look, I'm sick and tired that she's taking advantage of me. I'm sick and tired of taking advantage of me. I'm the third, I'm the second. You know, she's playing game, Right? So let's split the costs. They can't do that. So imagine a situation. One is an excellent cook, right? And one is an excellent businessman, have a lot of money, right? So they said, אלא אחד זנה, ואחד נותן לה דמי מזונות. So the rabbi said, the option to choose who is give her the food and who is give her the financial support is in the hand of the daughter. Now you go to the next step. This is going to be amazing. Listen to this business. Niset. Guess what happened? This beautiful daughter got married. Now you tell me, when a woman got married, what happened? The husband is taking care of her. So this beautiful daughter is going to get
3
payments. Hast gehört? Do you hear that? נישאת, הבעל נותן לה מזונות. Guess what? Tosfot tells us, you don't say, oh, wait a second, she's getting money from the second one. She gets money for the third husband of her mother, right? And now she's getting money from the new husband. V'hem, and each of the husband, either the ex or the husband of her mother, notnim la dmei mezonot. So she basically get 3 different avenues of money. Smart, huh?
Well, Rashi wouldn't say though then, but his intent was only while she was not married, in the same way that...
Tosfot said that you cannot tell me in this case, if it wasn't spelled out clearly, that if she get married, they stop. Remember, this guy get high when he married the mother.
Well, okay, I understand, but in the same way that Rashi's saying that you know, his real intent was only while he was married to the mother. So, I mean, how can Rashi say that in one hand and then not in this hand say his real intent was while the daughter was unmarried? It seems...
Doesn't work that way.
It seems to me related.
You make a commitment, soon you see...
Well, I mean, I understand you make a commitment. I'm just pointing out, that's why I don't see Rashi's point of
we'll go
what was
there.
in mind.
We'll go there.
Yeah,
We'll go there.
but it's limited though. It's 5 years ends.
Well, but that's the
But 5
limitation
years
of
is
the time.
5 years.
I
But
understand.
that's, yeah, so...
And especially imagine the feeling of all these husbands, you know. Metu bnoteihen, nizonot min chasim bnei chorim. If they passed away, if the 2 husbands of the mother died, their daughters are sustained from unsold properties, right, if is any. But vehi nizonet min chasim mishua abadim. And the wife's daughter whom agreed to sustain is sustained even from lien property that was sold. Mipnei shehi keba'alat chov, because she's like a creditor that you have a contract to support her. Hapikrim now is the very wise husband. Hayu kodvim, they're writing, they're spelling out clearly. Guess what? This contract, על מנת שאזון את ביתך 5 שנים כל זמן שאת עימי. I put a condition, as long as you are with me, I supported you. If you are out of that marriage, I'm not obligated.
And you could add the same clause about the daughter, as long as she's unmarried.
So the idea is, if a husband passed, or if the mother passed, or if they get divorced, he is not obligated to support the daughter. That's Rashi's view. But the Rosh, the Meiri, the Ran, the Rashba, they ask, how about if they get divorced and you have her back? So by that language, he doesn't need to support the daughter. Because the language is, as long as you are with me. Meaning for this marriage and not other marriage. The fact that he have her back is considering a separate marriage.
So most disagree with Rashi. That when Rashi says that he's not obligated.
Think about how shrewd is this guy.
No,
You understand what he's doing? Everyone understand?
I love this Mishnah.
This guy,
great Mishnah.
listen how he protecting himself.
Right.
He said to her, okay, you have a stepdaughter, that's wonderful. I'm going to support her. You want 5 years? 5 years. But here is the deal. As long as we are married, okay? As long as we are live together. Now, guess what? If there's any disagreement, listen what he can do. You're listening? Okay, here is the deal. He's divorcing her. And now he have her back. Guess what happened now? He's total free. He's considering a new marriage from any obligation, even they are together. That's the beauty of the Rosh and the Ran and other rabbis. Okay. So here we derive another disputation between the Amorim rabbis of the 4th century in regard to this Mishnah. Here we're dealing, yes?
It's an unusual Mishnah in that it's rare that you get tidbits of advice in the Mishnah. I mean, because that's essentially the last clause of the Mishnah was right. Just advice. If the smart guy does this, the wise guy does this.
The truth is, we believe in the divinity of this oral teaching, and the rabbi tells us that every single day there are messages, there are advice. Not always we get it,
right? But this one's very clear.
Sometimes it's clear and spelled out. Okay.
That's what I told you. I was saying that before.
Here is a new situation. Elliot right? And Joe, they meet in a wedding. Oh, Joe, I didn't see you for a long time. Oh, you look a little sad. I have something happy, good to tell you. What is it? Elliot said to Joe, you know what, I borrowed from you 10 grand. 10 grand? You borrowed from me several years ago 5 grand and you pay it back. What are you talking about? Yeah, I owe you 10 grand. Oh, that's wonderful. Joe starts smiling, right? Where is the money? Come, let's dance. We are now at the wedding. Right? The dance. Beautiful. Joe is smiling ear to ear. Right? 2 weeks later, the Joe traveled to Elliot's. He sees him in a synagogue and he says, Elliot, where's the money? Elliot said, what are you talking about? Don't you tell me you owe me 10 grand? I was joking. I wasn't serious. I just saw you have a sour face. I wanted to smile and dance. So here we ask a question. Is that for real or not? Because if there are 2 witnesses over there, when Elliot said that, and they testify to that, it's serious.
Yeah.
Itmar, here is a statement. Haomer lechavero. Elliot said to Joe, Chayav ani lecha maneh. Rashi explains that he said to him, I admitted I owe you money from long ago. Rabbi Yochanan amar chayav. V'reish Lakish amar patur. Rabbi Yochanan said, yes, Elliot needs to give Joe 10 grand. Reish Lakish said, no, he's not. Hey Chedame, let's understand what happened here. I de amar lehu atem edai, meaning he takes 2 kosher witnesses. 2 Shabbat observant witnesses are not relatives, people that trustworthy, and he take them, right? Joe take the 2 people and said, you are my witness, that here is Elliot telling me that he owes me 10 grand, right? And my ta'ama de Reish Lakish de kapatar. What's the rationale of Reish Lakish to say that he is free from paying that? Why? We learn in Mishna in Tractate Sanhedrin, page 29, that if a fellow said at the front of 2 trustworthy witnesses for something, that's basically obligatory. Over there is specifically if he said it in the front of the court, but the idea is the same idea that Pnei Yoshua explained. If there are 2 people who just passed by and they are not a designated witnesses, Maita Ama de Rabbi Yochanan de Kamechayev. So what's the idea, what's the rationale of Rabbi Yochanan that obligated him to pay? Because here the big question is, do we have Ma'aseh Kinyan? Did we have a matter of transactions or not? So the Gemara said, Le'olam delo ka'amar lewatemedai. You have to say that it's a case that he did not say to those present, you are my witness. V'hacha b'mayaskinan, here we are talking about the case, the amar lei, he said to his fellow, chayav ani lecha maneh bishtar. He said, I committed myself to you in a contract, which means what happened? Listen, he gave him an unsigned contract. So in that contract he stated that he is obligated to give him X amount of money. For example, at that time he says 100 dinar, but again, that contract is unsigned. So you have unsigned contract, how you treated that? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayav. He says, since you have the two witnesses, even that contract is unsigned, he is obligated to pay. Elliot obligated to pay Joe 10,000. Even it was unsigned contract, as long as you have two kosher witnesses. And he said, Alima milta dishtara keman de'amar lehu atem edai dami. We take his word given through a contract is legally as authoritative as one who said to, by Barry standard, you are my witnesses. So the Ritva explained that since it's unsigned contract, he doesn't carry the same weight as a sign, but still carry weight, since they are witnesses. Why? We have in the Mishnah in Tractate Bava Batra, page 175b, they say that if you recognize the handwriting of the borrower, then you have a basic for claim. Rish Lakish Amar Patu. Rish Lakish Amar is exempt. Since the contract is not signed, Lo alima milta dishtara. So he is exempt from payment. Why? Because his word given through a contract is legally not sufficiently authoritative to be considered a bona fide admission. So the Ritva explained is like a general statement, but again, it doesn't carry the same as a signing contract. Now we try to bring a proof to each view, because we need two rules. We need to know which way is right. So the Rishonim explained, what's the concept of kinyan? Many rabbis dealt with that. What is a kinyan? Kinyan meaning you have a transactions between two parties that have the understanding of two parties involved with commitment. It's called gmirut da'at, that both parties understand what's involved and both parties agree to each action that exercise in each and every one. Here you have, for example, a wedding. You have the two mechutanim, right? So even you don't have a signed contract, they dance, they happy with the children got married. You don't need a matter of kinyanim, just by being together. The case in the Mishna of the 5 years. So it's the same idea that the moment he got married to that mother, that's already a commitment, right, for 5 years. It's called in the wedding panim chadashot. It's a new chapter in the life. We said mazel tov. It's a new situation. So sometimes even things are not signed, it's already committed. So you see here, each party tried to bring a proof. We start with Rabbi Yochanan, who said that he is obligated to pay. Tnan, we learn in a Mishnah, Hanose ta'isha, if someone married a woman, upaska imo ladzunet bita 5 shanim, she made an agreement with him that he have to support her daughter from the previous marriage for 5 years period. Chayav lezuna 5 shanim. My love, ki hai gavna. What do you mean? A case like that, that she, the wife, has a proof that is a written commitment that said at the front of the witnesses, I commit myself to so and so. So even that is not a signed contract, and even it wasn't Maaseh Kinyan, the Mishnah said that the husband is still obligated, so that approved to Rabbi Yochanan. So if she have a clear signed contract, so for sure the husband needs to pay. We don't need to learn that. That's very obvious. We have to say that she have a unsigned document, but she have a witnesses that come and testify before the court that he committed himself. And the beauty of this Mishnah, that her daughter is protected for 5 years payment, even it's an unsigned contract. That's the way Pnei Yoshua and Tosfot explained to us. Page 102. Lo. The Gemara rejected that and said, no. Here we talk about Mishnah. The husband committed himself. Bishtarei psikta. You have a clear stipulated document, which means the bride and the groom writes this specific stipulation between them, and they have 2 kosher witnesses, Shabbat observant, people of trust, not relatives, that are there, and therefore the Mishnah wants to teach us that even the husband did not make any ma'aseh kinyan, any proof of commitment, but is still a matter of commitment. Rabbi Akiva Eger have a lot to say on that. I wish to have more time. Uch the Rav Gidel, the Amar Rav Gidel Amar Rav, when the father of the bride asked the father of the groom, Kama ata noten levincha, how much money you commit yourself for the upcoming wedding of your son? You know how it works. The bride and the groom can be best friends. The parents, it's a different story, right? The parent doesn't need to get along, and many times it's better for the parents to be away from them, right? So anyway, I always said, David will attest to that. My famous sermon is, the moment my children engage, I'm going to CVS or Rite Aid, right? And buying what? Very big what? How do you call it? Rubber band?
Yeah.
And put it on my lips. Right?
He goes out and buys a gag.
Right. Nothing to say anymore. They live their own life, right? So the father of the bride said the father of the groom, how much do you commit yourself? So he answered and he said, Kach vechach. That's the way. So the father of the groom asked the father of the bride, V'chama ata noten levitcha. And how much do you committed yourself to your daughter? Kach vekach. So and so. Amdu v'kidshu. So after these 2 guys, you remember them? The father of the bride and the father of the groom agreed. So the bride and the groom betrothed. Kanu. So they're already entitled to what the parents committed themselves. Hen advarim haniknim be'amira. Which means that it's no need, you see the beauty of Jewish law. It's no need to make manner of transactions, ma'aseh kinyanim, between the parents. It's enough that they have gmirut da'at, they have agreement between the 2 parents. I can attest to that. My children, I'm not going to tell you who and what, that I made a verbal agreements, and the other mechutan make a verbal agreements, and that's it. And each party stand firm and fulfill our agreements. I did it to each and every one of my kids, and it wasn't easy all the time, but that's the beauty of Jewish law. You make, your word is your honor. You give your word and that's it, right? So what you see here, that is no proof from our Mishnah to the view of Rabbi Yochanan, because the Mishnah speaks about what? About signed document, that this is a total agreement by everyone. Now, the problem is, imagine a situation. You go to Waldorf Astoria in New York City to a wedding, right? And each plate is cost at least $150.
cheap wedding at Waldorf Astoria.
$250, right?
There you go.
But this guy, at this very moment, he doesn't have the money in his pocket. For all kind of reasons, right? So what did he do? He writes a commitment. I committed myself to give you $5,000 gift. Right? Just write it on a piece of paper. No signature, no witnesses. Right? Is that a commitment? Here you see a similar case, and we're going to juxtapose. You have a guy in a synagogue that everyone pray for. He has no children, he married a long time, and guess who is praying the most? Was a Kohen, or few Kohanim. They're davening hard for this guy. You know why they do that? Listen carefully. Tashma, this is a Mishna in Tractate Bechorot, page 51, dealing with a very unique law. This is a blessing that happens, hopefully, maybe once, maybe sometimes even more than once in a person's life, which is called Pidyon Haben. My wife and I had the privilege to have that with Eli, with our oldest sons, Eli Melech. The Spinker Rebbe, may rest in peace, was the Kohen at that time. It was a big ceremony. The idea is if you have the firstborn child,
You got to give the Kohen money.
right? You have 5 slaim, is a lot of money. By the Torah, right? You have to give to a Kohen in exchange for your child. 30 days after he was born, right? It's called Pidyon Haben. It's a separate, beautiful ceremony. The Torah said both in the book of Shmot, chapter 13, and the book of Bamidbar, chapter 18, that this is an obligation that you have to give to a Kohen as a redemption for the firstborn child. Katav laKohen, so the person writes to the Kohen, she'ani chayav lecha 5 slaim, chayav liten lo 5 slaim. I commit myself to 5 slaim, that's the currency, so uvno eno padui. And his son is still not redeemed. Why? Because he gave him unsigned contract at the front of the witnesses. They said that as long as payment not take place, it's not sufficient. So what you see from here, if you give an unsigned document at the front of witnesses, is match Rabbi Yochanan. It's considering as someone who agree upon certain amount. Now, Shane atam de mishuabad lemid deoraita. Here you have the difference. You know why? Because the father, by biblical term, is obligated, which means it's like agree upon debt. It's not the commitment. Is the idea because since the Torah obligated the person to redeem his firstborn son
has a commitment.
from the
commitment's
so
there.
that's right. So it means that this Mishnah is not applied to disputation between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. So the Gemara challenge, Ihachei amai katav. So if you have a biblical law, so why the father need to write this contract? He needs to do it regardless. Good morning, Dr. Friedman. So the Gemara explained and said, Kedei levarer lo kohen. Guess what happened? There's more than one kohen in a shul that daven for him. And when you have the firstborn child and he's so happy, guess what? Several kohanim come to him and said, listen, Yosaleh, I daven for you so hard that you have a child, and I'm expecting you to have me as the Kohen 30 days from now to redeem your son, and he needs to pick and choose. He cannot have more than one, right? You need one Kohen to do that. So he needs now to select the Kohen. So therefore, that's the case. Yachei. If that's the idea that it's basically the specific Kohen, no amai no padui. The Shita Mikubetzet explained, and he said, the moment that the Kohen have the 5 slaim, so it's kesef pidyon, it means that that's basically having his hand, and why his son is not redeemed. So he said, Kide Ula. The reason is this is a matching point of Ula. The Amar Ula, Dvar Torah, Padui Lechshe Yiten. Meaning, when he exercised the mitzvah by physically giving the 5 slaim to a Kohen, that's based on Gemara in Bchorot, page 51. The moment he does that, then it's effective. Why? Why the rabbi said that his son is not redeemed? People are not always erudite, not always familiar with the law, and therefore the rabbi said here is a decree, is a boundary around Torah law, that people will mistakenly thinking that you can use, for example, checks, unfulfilled checks, like merchants sometimes transferring checks from one vendor to another vendor. He said, I don't have a cash to pay you now for the merchandise, so here is the postponing checks. I get it from my customers, I'm signing over, you can take it. And people mix between those documentations, so that's a big problem. The Ketuvot and others explain that therefore what we see, we do not have a proof from the Mishnah to Rabbi Yochanan, because the obligation of the father, it's not because he agree upon that, but it's only because the obligation of the Pidyon Haben, right? And it's basically a rabbinic decree. So now, what we try to do, we try to match the disputation between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan to the Tanaic, meaning earlier, 1st, 2nd century rabbis, Tanaic rabbis, that disputed over that. What's the disputation? If a person committed himself even in a written document, is that a final commitment or not? Why? Because here is a scenario. Imagine that Joe go to a gmach. You know what is a gmach?
Yeah.
Gmach is the free Hebrew loan.
Yeah.
You have in a community people in need. They need to marry their children. They need to buy a house. They need all kind of some money. You have the community develop a free Hebrew loan for those in need. So the guy who in charge for the gemach, he said, wait a second, I don't know this guy. I don't know Joe. So Elliot come in and he said to Reuven, the guy who in charge for the gemach, I know Joe, it's okay, you can lend him the money. Oh, Elliot is a very respected person. The banks knows him, the institution, investment institution, he has a lot of businesses. They knew him, they trusted him. So because Reuven knew Elliot, and Elliot said verbally that you can give the money to Joe, he's almost like Arev, like co-signer. So now Joe can have the money. The problem, as you all know, sometimes you have ups and downs in life. You have how many guys you know at one time in their lives they have free and clear home, money in a bank, free and clear beautiful car. 15 years later, heavy loan on their home, the 2 credit card was matched out, and then the big debt. You know guys like that? Happen in life. So it's a sensitive situation. So what happened here? Here is the Rava view. Rava said, Amar Rava, the disputation between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish is the same as we study in Bava Batra 175b. Arev hayotze achar chitum shtarot. You have a guarantor, which is what? Elliot. Okay? he appears after the signatures in contract. Someone wrote that he is guarantor for a loan after the contract was signed. Gove min chasim bnei chorim. The creditor collects only from unsold property of the guarantor, since the guarantee is not viewed as though it was written in a document, is treated like a loan by oral agreement, which is collected only from unsold property. Maaseh ba lifnei Rabbi Ishmael. This situation happened the front of great rabbi that we said every day. You know Rabbi Ishmael, remember him? Every morning we said his name. So ve'amar, and Rabbi Ishmael said, the lender gove min chasim bnei chorim. He, the collector, collects from unsold properties. Which means, since you have an unsigned document, even you have two witnesses, kosher witnesses, that testify for that, it's still not a guarantee that committed. Amar lo Ben Nanas. Ben Nanas said, no, the creditor eno gove lo min chasim nechorim lo min chasim meshuabadin. Ben Nanas refuted and he said, absolutely not from unsold property, not from the lien property that was sold, since what the guarantor wrote has no legal standing whatsoever. Amar lo, Rabbi Ishmael asked Ben Anas, why he cannot collect the money? Because it's like a new co-signing agreement. So why the creditor, the lender, cannot exercise his right by this commitment? So Amar lo, Ben Anas responded and said, Arei shaya chonek et chavero bashuk. You know those movies? You see a guy holding a capture, holding the gun. Do you know those movies? Davy, Joe, Elliot, right? You know those scenarios? And said, if you don't do so and so, I'm going to kill him, right? So here is a fellow who's standing in a shuk, in a market. He is choking another person. Umtsa'o chavero, and a third person is there. Amar lo, and he said to the lender, Hanach lo v'ani iten lecha. Leave him alone and I'll pay what he owes you. Right? So you see a situation. Reuven and Shimon. Levi is a wealthy person. He walks in a store and he see Reuven fighting with Shimon because Shimon owes him money, and he's choking him around his head, about to kill him or wounded him. And Levi gets very upset, so he said, what's going on? He owes me money. So Levi said to him, leave him alone, I'll pay you. Right? But two, Levi is exempt from paying that debt. If Reuven take Levi to a bet to a court, he's exempt. You know why? Shelo emunato hilvau. Because he did not lend the money based on his trust in the friend of the victim, as the friend promised to repay the loan only after the money had been loaned. The same should apply in the case of the guarantor who comes after the contract was already signed. So they said, Leima Rabbi Yochanan de'amar ke Rabbi Ishmael, v'reish Lakish de'amar ke Ben Anas. Now you see a matching juxtaposition between the two. You mean to say Rabbi Yochanan said that if you have an unsigned contract that was given to a creditor at the front of the witnesses, that's considering something that is obligatory. So that's match Rabbi Ishmael that said that if you have an unsigned agreement at the front of witnesses, that's already the co-signer obligated. And the same applied the other way with Reish Lakish. The Gemara refuted that and said, no, aliba de ben nanas kule alma lo pligei. I explain more in Rashi here used klomar, we don't have time, but the Gemara said, according to the view of Ben Anas, everyone agreed that if he wrote in a contract, I owe you 100 dinar, for example, he is not obligated to pay. And therefore, according to Ben Anas, everyone, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, agreed that if you have an unsigned contract, It's not an obligatory that created a obligation upon the borrower, because Ben Anas owned that even the co-signer, this type of documentation is not sufficient to commit himself. So how much so when it's someone who's a borrower? With this stipulated contract, it's not sufficient to commit himself to that. If you remember, this is what the Prisha said in Choshen Mishpat 129. They said, you remember the story in the book of Bereshit, book of Genesis, chapter 43, verse 9. They said when Yaakov Avinu, our forefather Jacob, was strongly opposed to send his last son to Egypt, Benjamin. And Yehuda came in and said, don't worry, I commit myself. Anochi a'arvenu miyadi tevakshenu. Yehuda commit himself that Binyamin will be back, right? So we derive from that sometimes co-signer commit themselves even without matter of kinyan, of transaction, physical, just by giving his word. So therefore, it is okay what Rabbi Yochanan said, he matched what Rabbi Ishmael hold, and not according to Ben Anas. 102b, Ki pligei aliba de Rabbi Ishmael. So Rashi tells us, if you deeply goes and say that Reish Lakish matched the view of Ben Nanas, not according to Rabbi Ishmael, it's incorrect, because Reish Lakish will tell you that he disputed Rabbi Yochanan in any matter, even according to Rabbi Ishmael, the way that the Gemara explained to us. And the Gemara elaborates. Rabbi Yochanan ki Rabbi Ishmael. Why? Because Rabbi Yochanan obligated a borrower that he agreed upon unsigned document, so for sure he obligated a co-signer that agreed that consent or admitted in that matter. Reish Lakish can respond to that and said, Ad kan lo kama Rabbi Ishmael hatam. Only Rabbi Ishmael applies in a case of co-signer, mishum deshayach le'shi'abuda deoraita, because by the Torah law he is obligated, he is meshu'abad, meaning he has committed himself, even without, the Rashbam explained, even without kinyan. This is a Rashbam, well-known Rashbam in Bava Batra 173b. So even without ma'aseh kinyan, chalot kinyan, that's already an obligation. So therefore, he can hold obligation even without a signed document. Aval hacha, however, here, when we are speaking about borrower, lo shayach shi'abuda deoraita. So you cannot impose a shi'abud, an obligation by the biblical term. So therefore, if you have an unsigned document, is not obligatory. So since we cannot juxtapose a new commitment to that, you have to say that Rabbi Ishmael holds that this borrower is exempt from payment. So therefore, the Gemara goes back to the early understanding of the disputation between Rabbi Ishmael and Ben Nanas, and they hold that their disputation applies to two different matters. One, if you have an unsigned document that have the testimony of two witnesses, that's basically a retroactive act of admission upon a retroactive action that taking place and imposing now. Two, this documentation, it can be a new obligation of a new commitment, and that's based on the way that Tosfot and Maharam Shif explained to us. Now I want to refresh your memory to something I said in the introduction. You remember in the introduction I mentioned Rabbeinu Asher, Rosh, who asked a question. When it's come to commitment between parents, meaning father of the bride and the father of the groom meet, and they commit themselves to certain expenses, that is an effective commitment, even you do not have ma'aseh kinyan, versus when it's come to brother who commit himself to his sister, or even a mother, we do not hold that obligation. Why? So the idea is, we say that the simcha itself, the idea that they are merited, these two fathers, to marry their children, that's called the simcha itself, ma'aseh kinyan. So now, gufa marav gidel amarav, when here you have a wonderful occasion, a simcha, the father of the bride, the father of the groom said, Kama ata noten levincha. You, the father of the groom, tell me, the father of the bride, how much you commit yourself to the marriage of your son. He answered and he said, Kach vechach, that's exactly my commitment. The father of the groom returned and asked again the father of the bride, Vechama ata noten levitcha. So how much you giving for your daughter? Kach vekach, so and so. Amdu vekitshu, they went ahead and betrothed the children. Kanu, which is the children, meaning the bride and the groom, hold the commitment of both father, even it was without maaseh kinyan, without the manner of transactions. Which means, the Meforshim explains, that here you have kinyan even without ma'aseh kinyan, even without chalot kinyan. That's the Shev Shmaitzer and the K'tzot have a lot to say, but in short, ma'aseh kinyan is sometimes not necessarily. Here is an example. Here, hen hadvarim haniknin ba'amira. These are among the things that are acquired to words alone, without the need for an additional act of acquisition. So here, you have here the document, the Mishnah referred to the record in such an agreement. So the Yehuda, the great Rabbi Landau of Prague, have exchanged letters with a big righteous man, his son-in-law, Rabbi Yosef. He was a Rav in a city called Posen. The question is, that manner of kinyan, the acquisition that applies solely by a person's word, is from the notion of arevut, which means co-signing, and here it's not applicable, or it's only rabbinic decree, takana de rabbanan, and therefore why you have here a chalot kinyan. How exactly that is an effective commitment? Because you see it in the Rashbam, you see it in Ritva, you see it in Tosfot, page 109, and more, that said that word is not sufficient only if it's incorporated the manner of kiddushin, the betroth that the groom did right after the parents make the commitments. However, if it was a distance of time between the father's commitment and the betrothed of the groom, they have to have ma'aseh kinyan, they have to have some manner of transactions in order to make it happen, because the language here, they use amdu v'kidshu. Amdu v'kidshu resonate the idea that it happens right away. Versus, you see at the Tosfot in Kiddushin, page 9, that said no, that even it happens later, the groom betrothed the bride, it's still a retroactive act even without ma'aseh kinyan. because it was al da'at rishona, it was in a matter of retroactive act, and the fact that both fathers commit themselves to each other, that's hold even the ma'aseh kiddushin, the matter of betrothed, takes place later. So now Rava elaborates on his point, and he said, Amar Rava mistabra milta de Rav. What Rav said, be bito na'ara. If someone betrothed his daughter who was a na'ara, it's a male teenager. The kamatei hana'a leyadei. The father has a great naches, has a great joy, which means that's the money of dowry, or that's the money that he dedicated to her from his earning, which means the typical father put in a saving account every month, every 2 weeks, and so often for the future need of his daughter. So since it creates his own great joy, so therefore that's the cause for that to be effective, to take place. That's called ma'aseh kinyan. Even it was not kinyan sudar, even you don't lift up a handkerchief. So the union of poskim, big contemporary rabbi have a discussion. What happened if the bride sees that her father or her father-in-law, or the groom see his father or father-in-law in a great distress, because they remember when they commit themselves to such amount. Imagine, especially in the religious communities, you have large family, Ken Yirbo, Kenai Nahoram, many more, Mitzvah. And this is a common question. The father commit themselves, and or the father of the bride, the brother of the groom, both of them. And now the bride and the groom feel bad. They feel that, we don't want dad to be in such a stress. So they basically want to let go. They said, okay, forget about you commit yourself to certain things. So the answer, the rabbi said in very short, that since the commitment, regardless who committed, if it's the father of the bride, father of the groom, or both, you get to have both, meaning husband and wife, together to say that they make a mechila, that they forgive. Why? Because in a sense, it's like one of those serious commitment. It's a very famous story about Rabbi Ze'ev, the Vilna Maggid, the one of the great Lithuanian teacher and speaker and orator. So he has a large family, and he commit himself to his daughter's dowry, nedunya. Unfortunately, he wasn't in a financial position to pay. So he was a good speaker, so he delivered a speech. And he said, look, when I need to deliver a simple speech, it's simple. And I just deliver my talk. If it's something that's very hard, I use a mashal, I use an allegory, I use a story, I use something that people will understand. So he said, sometimes when you have a bride and a groom and nothing is perfect, so the father needs to come up with a dowry to make sure that everything is complete. But here by us, the reality is that my daughter and the chassan are perfect. And therefore they are so perfect, they don't need a dowry. And for sure he was like kind of joking because he doesn't have the money at that very moment. But the whole idea is, when you have this matter of letting go, it has to be a consent of both the husband and wife, because that commitment applies to both. So they said, Afal bogeret. However, if the father gives the money of betrothed to his advanced age daughter, mature, the lo matei hana'al li deilo, it's a different manner of derivative of benefit of joy, even monetarily. Veha Elokim, that's a language of oath. Amarav afilu bogeret. He says even mature daughter. The ilo teima hachei, that if you don't hold that way, avi haben, meaning the father of the groom, my hana'a atal lidei, what type of joy he had. He is not receiving anything, and anyway his commitment has an effect. You have to say that the commitment of the parents, it's not depend upon receiving a monetary benefits. And Rava concluding his word, Ela be'ahi hana'a dekamichatnei ahadadei gamrei umaknei lahadadei, that the exchange of the benefit, which means that the groom and bride marry each other, the father fully transfer the rights to the respective payments to each other. So there is a discussion among the rabbis what exactly matter of transactions is here. Some say that it's kinyan kesef, which means the acquisition of money. For example, the Gemara said in Gittin 14, that's the Chazon Ish in Kiddushin 54, he hold that it's not by kinyan kesef, it's just gmirut dat, is the idea that they are both agreed to do it. The Rabbi Dr said that that matter of Kiddushin is rabbinic. So now the Gemara said, here we have a dilemma in that. Amar le Ravina le Rav Ashi, dvarim halalu, this commitment between the father, the bride, and the father of the groom, nitnu likatev or lo nitnu likatev. Do you allow to put it in writing, or you cannot write it down? The foundation of this is the sages give the power, even without ma'aseh kinyan, without a matter of acquisition, that if you have a witness that signed up, it can exercise from estate or not. So they said, Amar lei, lo nitanu leikatev, they are not allowed to be written down. The sages not give the gushpanka, the right to do it. So because people can access to a lien properties inappropriately, and therefore you should not write it down. Eitivei hapikhin, those who are very smart, היו כותבים, as we said in the Mishna, על מנת שיזונו בידי 5 שנים כל זמן שעתי מי. I supported my stepdaughter, your daughter, 5 years, as long as we are together. So my כותבים, אומרים, you don't write it, you just verbally said it, cannot write it. וקרא לאמירה כתיבה, isn't that the hearsay evidence by just saying and not writing? So the Gemara said, Ein vehatnan. We learn in the Mishnah, page 83, הכותב לאשתו, דין ודברים אין לי בנכסייך. If someone writes to his wife, I have nothing to do with your estate, ותענה רבי חייא, האומר לאשתו, which means you see here that the language is interconnected between saying and writing. The Gemara bringing proof from Mishnah in Tractate Bava Batra, page 167b. אין כותבין שטרי אירוסין ונישואין, אלא מדעת שניהם. They say that one should not write a letter of betrothal or marriage contract, only the consent of bride and the groom, both of them together. Now we said, which means only in that sense you put it in writing. So nisuin is the Ketubah contract, and soon you see what is erusin. Hamida'at shneihen, kodvim, if both consent, they write it. My love, shitrei psikta, You mean to say this is a documentation of stipulation that specified the agreements accepted by each other before they marry. So that's unlike the view of Rav Ashi. The Gemara said, Lo, shtarei erusin mamash. This is actual betrothal document. So he said, in case where a man betrothed a woman by giving her a document that states, you are hereby betrothed to me, the document must be written with the consent of both the man and the woman. Ki de Rav Papa v'Rav Shrevya ve'itmar ktavo lishma. If one writes the betrothed document for the sake of a specific woman and gave it to her, ve'shelo midata, but without her consent, Rabba ve'Ravina Amrei Mekudeshet. Rabba and Ravina said she is betrothed to this man with that stipulation document. Rav Papa ve'Rav Shravya Amrei Eina Mekudeshet. The other two, Rav Papa and Rav Shravya, said she is not betrothed. So what we see here? We see here this disputation that that Mishnah follow Rav Papa and Rav Shravya. So Shnehem meaning the husband and wife, and more on that you see in Gemara in Tractate Kiddushin, page 9b, and also you see extensive writing of the late Stipler Kehilot Yaakov explain this manner of Kiddushin, because as the Gemara tells us, beginning of Tractate Kiddushin, that there are three avenues of betrothed, Kesef, Shtar, and Bi'ah. So here we have the third question of the ruling of Rav Ashi, Tashma Metu, if the husband of the wife passed away, Bnotehem, the daughter of the deceased, of the husbands, Nizonot, they have the sustenance, Min Chasim Bnei Chorim, they sustain from unsold property, but not from properties that has a lien. Vehi, the daughter of the wife, meaning the stepdaughter, Nizonet Min Chasim Meshuabadim, the wife daughter whom they agreed to sustain for 5 years, is sustained even from a lien property that was sold. Why? Mipnei shehi keba'alat chov, because she is like a regular creditor. So what you see, because they are sustained from that lien estates, meaning that she have this document. So otherwise, how do you collect the money from a lien estate? Which means you can put things in writing. Rashi explained it, and he said that because she can have a sustenance from a lien estate, it's indirect proof that she carried that written document. So the Gemara rejected that and said, Hacha b'maya skinan. Here in the Mishnah, you know what we're dealing with? Beshekanu miyado, which means the eidim, the witnesses, receive a kinyan from each and every one of the husbands, that they commit themselves for that daughter, and they did kinyan sudar, like lift up the handkerchief, like we do when we selling the chametz. So that's the reason why the daughter, the stepdaughter, can access to those properties that had a lien, which means you do not have any proof for the Mishnah against the word of Rav Ashi. If you tell me that the husbands made a matter of acquisition for their commitment, but not name, also daughters have this manner of obligation, they can collect it from a estate that carries a lien, and it's basically the same as it's applied to the daughter of the wife. So the Gemara responded and said, "B'shekanu lazo velo kanu lazo." The reason it's because they acquired the right to receive sustenance to this daughter of the wife, and they did not perform an act of acquisition confirming the obligation to provide sustenance for their own daughter. So umay paska. So what make necessary to say that the one is an acquisition was made on behalf of the wife's daughter and not on behalf of the husband's own daughter? You have to differentiate if they are the present, the stepdaughter, the daughter of the wife, while he was alive, she was at the time of the acquisition, so therefore it is an effective manner of acquisition, versus daughter that was not present, meaning they are not alive at the time of that acquisition, which means that happened before the parents got married. So therefore, for them, the transaction is not effective. And because it's not effective, so the Meiri explained, we have this principle that the person cannot make a matter of acquisition kinyan al davar shelo ba la'olam, acquisition of something that not happened yet. You cannot make a deal over egg that before the chicken deliver the egg. Before things happen, you cannot make this type of agreement. So therefore, they cannot access to those properties that carries a lien. So the Gemara asks, Mi lo askinan, the havai bishat kinyan. Are we not also dealing with situation where the husband's daughter were present at the time of the transaction? Vehechedame, give me a situation, kegon begersha, he divorced his wife after they have daughters, ve'ahadra, and he brought her back, which means the husband married a woman that already have a daughter from another man, and she have a daughter with him. After the daughter was born, he divorced his wife, and then he brought her back and married her. So therefore, she said that you have to support my daughter, and he did. Then he divorced her second time, and then the next husband came and married her, and she have daughters with him. So, and this husband also divorced her and have her back, and she asked him to support the daughter, and they agree on that. So you see here, Ela ihi, the daughter of the wife, the leita bitnai bet din, because she do not have a sustenance by the stipulation of the court requiring a husband to support his daughters. Mehanei la kinyan, that matter of acquisition is an effective one. But not the itnehu bitnai bet din. But however, daughters that it's part of their sustenance is the court stipulations. So therefore, lo mehaner lehu kinyan, the transaction is not effective. You remember we studied at the Mishnah, page 52b, that the sages put an institution. Rashi explained that the person commit himself at the time of that marriage that he supported his daughter even after his passing. Banan nukvan di yavyan lichi minaychi yevein yatvan beveiti umitavzanan min chasai. He commit himself in a Ketubah that if we have a daughter together, so they continue to stay in my home and have the sustenance for my estate, that's an obligatory statement that it's part of the stipulation by the rabbinic court. So the Gemara asks, Migra Gar'ei, because they are included in the stipulation of the court, they are worst off? Quite the opposite. Since the stipulation of the court demands that they be supported, they should wield more power. Elab notav hainu ta'ama kevan de'itnehu bitnai beidin, because they are depend upon the stipulation of the court, Eimar tzrarei atpesinhu. So it means that the father gave them a bundles of money while he was still alive. So they cannot repossess lien property because the father already paid them. So therefore they cannot have an access to a state that has a lien versus the daughter of the wife. He was not concerned that he gave her the bundles of money. So therefore she can access, because all of her support is by the Tnai Beit Din, the stipulation of the court. So therefore she can have an access to a state that carries a lien. Then the Mishnah said, Lo Yomar Harishon, the first husband may not say that he will provide his wife's daughter his support only if she is with him. Rather, he must bring a sustenance to her in the place where her mothers live. Amar Rav Chizda. So the Gemara elaborates and said Rav Chizda derived from that. Zot omeret, by saying that I'm going to send that support to a place that she live with her mother, and not using the word the house of her brothers, we derive from that bat etzel ima, which means daughter goes to her mother, which means daughter that her father passed away and she have her support from her brothers, she needs to collect her support in the mother's house, and you cannot force her to come and live with them, which means the Rashi explained that it's pritzut. It's a few explanations why is that. Anyway, mimai di bigdola askinan. From where do we know that we're dealing with a case of an adult woman, where there is a general guideline that in case of divorce a girl lives with her mother. So they said dilma biktana askinan. We may speak about a young daughter, and when we said the place of her mother, not the house of her brother, mishum ma'aseh she'aya, it was a young orphan that she lives with her brother, and things turn sour. The Tanya, Mishemet, one passed away, v'niach ben katan le'imo, and his young son. יורשי האב אומרים יהיה גדל אצלנו, ואילו אמו אומרת יהיה בני גדל אצלי. The inheritance of the father said he should raise in our place. The mother said in my place. מניחין אותו אצל אמו ומניחים אותו אצל ראוי ליורשו. You leave it by his mother and not by someone who is entitled, in a sense that befitting to be the one who's taking care of him. מעשה היה, it was one case, rare but painful case, הושחתו ערב הראשון. It was such a family feuds over money, which is frightening, that they kill him even the first night he came to them, because they want the money. It's a reflection. The Yavet said it was the eve of Pesach, but the reflection of story of Adam and Eve. I meant of Cain and Abel. But for that, they kill him. So here, you do not leave a minor with someone that you're afraid that he will damage him. So may the Mishnah teach us this, which means the Mishnah speak about the minor and teach us that you cannot leave her by her brothers, because it may happen they will kill her in order to have their portion, the 1/10 that she received from her dowry. But if she is adult daughter, you're not concerned about this type of murderer, so she can be, Rashi said, by her brothers. So the Gemara said, Im ken, if so, you have to differentiate between the mature adult to a minor, young. Litnei, the Tanash will say that he should carry her sustenance lemakom shehi, the place where she, the daughter, is located, which means the mature one is the house of the brothers, and the young one is the place that she like the mother's house. So the Gemara said, with just few lines in Kuf Gimel, Mai le makom she'ima, שמעת מינה בת אצל האם לא שנה גדולה ולא שנה קטנה. Which means when it's come to the mother, it's no different if she's an adult woman or if she's a minor girl. The gdola, the adult, is the issue of pritzut, or she learned the way that her mother, and the ktana, the minor, the Maram Padoa said that is a concern that may kill her, like the story we have here, and the Rabbi Iger and Gurnei Shas explained that that's a serious concern, especially after that incident.
Boyachem leshuloim malachai yeshuloim malachai